Hello and welcome back, and that is right. Today I want to return to the subject of this. This is something we talked about for the last couple of weeks, the UniFi travel router. This is predominantly a gateway device that allows you to securely and safely access your existing UniFi network back home, and I thought I would take the opportunity while I'm making my way through different airports on the way to Vegas for CES 2026 to kind of expand upon what the capabilities are. Now, right now I've got this device connected to a battery pack, but more importantly, I want to know just what are the extent when utilising this with public Wi-Fi. I'm going to be using, for starters, the Wi-Fi here at Heathrow in London, and I'm going to be connected to this device with a mobile phone. I'm going to be connecting to it with a laptop, and I'm going to be connecting to this device with a tablet. Now, the reason I'm using all of these devices is a lot of the time mobile travel routers like this one are designed around the idea that this becomes your gateway. All your other devices are already preset to connect to it, and it allows you to only have to do the connections once. But moreover, sometimes you'll use facilities where you have to log in multiple times. Maybe it's a question of a secure gateway. Maybe it's a case of some devices you want to be able to monitor their usage and perhaps limit access to certain client devices. So I've already got this paired with the mobile app. Hopefully you can see that there on screen. As you can see, I've already connected to it, and here in Heathrow, I can go ahead and, as you can see, the Heathrow Wi Fi is already available there on screen. So I can go ahead and I can connect with the Heathrow Wi Fi. The other thing you may be able to see there on screen right now is that the travel router has already got those 3 clients pre-connected. Because I've already established a connection between this travel router and my different client devices, they are all ready and waiting to go ahead and connect with the internet services. Now, when we go into the different Wi-Fi services here, what's going to be interesting is when we go in, now we've already got it established on the router device on this mobile phone. I can go ahead, find the UniFi travel router, as you can see there, go ahead and connect to it. And what will happen is, if there is a secure gateway or some kind of limiting into your email address barrier to get in, that is where it would appear. But as you can see, the Heathrow Wi-Fi here doesn't even require any kind of email to get me into it. And right now, as you can see there on screen, the Heathrow Wi-Fi right now is showing us 2 bars, but more importantly, all of my devices right now have got access. So if I go ahead and open up a new tab here, and I'll put in speed test, obviously the speed we're going to get in a public Wi-Fi isn't going to be great, but it's the idea that right now I can run a speed test on the mobile device for that access, that it's already auto-connected to the UniFi travel router, and I've now got internet services here on the tablet, which means I've not had to go through those gateways multiple times. The same goes with the laptop. On the bottom right of the screen, as hopefully you can see right now, I've already got access to the Wi-Fi via that travel router. So if I put in BBC News, it allows me to immediately have access to the internet services there. It really is that straightforward. But this has been a Wi-Fi service without any barriers, right? What happens when I try to use a public access point that has a login screen, that has a page that requires access via an email address entry or just names and details? To test a scenario whereby there would have to be a credential entry screen, I went ahead on the train journey on the way to the airport and went ahead and used Southern's train Wi-Fi there. And the process was largely identical to that which you've already seen. The only difference being that when I did access the Wi-Fi access point via the mobile application for the first time, I had to go through that setup process. Now, it is going to differ from public Wi-Fi to public Wi-Fi point, but still nonetheless, it's nice to know that you're only going to have to go through that process once. Now, circling back onto the mobile application, as hopefully you can see there on screen, the level of control we've got with those connected devices, be they family members or more, I would argue there's still a little bit of work to be done on this. You have control, but how much restriction you can do in setting up safe settings is, yet to be seen. So, for example, there we can add aliases to different devices to get a better understanding of what they are, reconnecting the devices if we need to push them off and back on there. But The level of control we got to different radio bands on this device isn't really available. And if we go into the settings menu there, we can set up additional Wi-Fi settings there if we choose to, but there isn't a vast amount we can knock around with, although we can of course set up some of the VPN configurations with things like WireGuard to allow that gateway between all of these devices to be established and therefore not have to worry about setting up individual VPN credentials. But just keep in mind, of course, using a VPN on a travel router with all those other devices already on, almost certainly a limited internet connection is going to result in quite a throttling in the throughput there. Now, moving forward, we can talk a little bit more about that teleport process, because I do think that is something worth discussing there. The teleport process, when we go back into it, allows us to tunnel into that remote UniFi connection as if we are local. So, as you can see, I've got a couple of different setups there. I'm going to go ahead and remote patch into my Dream 7 setup there. That is my UniFi Dream Router 7.
Departure to Belfast City, flight number 1402 will be delayed until...
One of the things that's not really been brought to the front in terms of a lot of the reviews that have been discussing this is power consumption. We all know by now this doesn't have an internal power battery or anything like that and runs from USB bus. But just what are we talking in terms of power consumption? Well, as you can see right now, we've got that full connection to the Heathrow public Wi-Fi here at the airport. I'm utilising a remote access point to my UniFi setup. I'm also connected to it via that Windows PC there, as well as connecting to it via my Android tablet, and finally here at the end connected to it on my mobile phone. Luckily, because I'm accessing this and powering it via this power bank, it allows me to see just what this power consumption is going to be. And as you can see right now, with those three devices connected, the power consumption is actually pretty modest, at just around 3 watts power consumption during access with those three devices. Go ahead and run that space test there. Go for it with our speed test and run our speed test, and finally do a secondary speed test over here. Running all of those speed tests at exactly the same time on all three devices, all happening simultaneously. We can see that the power consumption is still comfortably sat around the 3 watts, and that is with all three devices accessing this travel router from UniFi there. So again, pretty nice stuff. You're going to be able to run this on even Billy basic USB 2 connections. So no harm, no foul. I know it would be great if there was a battery included, but at that kind of power consumption, really, you're going to run this off anything. But the last big test for me in this video is going to be when I'm in the sky, when I'm on the plane, utilising plane Wi-Fi. Because a lot of the time, some people who use the plane Wi-Fi that is provided, although it is very restricted, the sites that you can go to, it does at least allow you to get to a lot of messaging applications and general search services. And, you know, multimedia, of course, as well. But a lot of the time, Wi-Fi hotspots will not function on a plane. So even if you use your phone to access the free Wi-Fi on a plane, you won't be able to use the hotspot in a number of cases, or in most cases, to share it with the rest of your devices. A lot of users, arguably with a merit of truth to it, would say that the reason for this is because a lot of plane companies want you to pay the individual pricing for each of those devices. Now, what's going to be interesting is when I head up into the sky, if I connect this device to the plane Wi-Fi, will this travel router allow all of my devices to have access to the internet via that single paid access? Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's go. Right, so how did connecting this device to the plane Wi-Fi go and sharing it around? Well, a few disclaimers straight out the gate. It would have been incredibly inconsiderate of me to record this video surrounded by people who are trying to get some kip on an overnight flight. So I'll say right now, I've recorded this after the fact for that reason, and you can also tell from the low light it's affected by the recordings there. Connecting the device to the plane Wi-Fi, I picked it up, the BA Wi-Fi there, and then I had to go in via my mobile to use the portal in order to purchase the Wi-Fi and therefore get it running into the travel router. But from that point, I was comfortably able to attach multiple devices to the travel router and enjoy that single paid Wi-Fi connection across my different devices there. But I will say, I definitely felt the strain when it came to those connections, the speed, the load of the pages and more. It's just having that 2x2 antenna and the 2.5 gig and 5 gig wireless connections there, the radio frequency being shared not only with the connection with the plane Wi-Fi but my connected devices.
definitely led to an underwhelming performance number there. I do think there is definitely room for improvement in a follow-up to this or an extended range product to have more antennae. I don't know whether it was to limit the amount of power being drawn on this scale or just how much they could fit in temperature-wise, but still, it didn't give me a great level of performance with the connected devices. Right, what about temperatures? Because although this is a low-powered device, what about the congestion of those wireless points in different setups? Does this device get annoyingly hot and will it force the device to reboot? So first test I did there was connecting with standard USB power directly into my laptop device and connecting to 3 different Wi-Fi connected devices. I saw temperatures at the top and bottom of around low points at 42 degrees up to 45 degrees. You can see the heat spot that was left on the table there. But what about if I connected to the device using one of those Ethernet connections? Next test was having the device not only connected to those existing 3 Wi-Fi connections as well as the USB power going in, but I also introduced it into an existing LAN environment. You can see that single cable is going into the LAN connection, not the WAN. So from there, I just wanted to give those devices access to the local area network in the place that it was in, just to see how that would impact heat generation on the RJ45. It's only a 1 gig network port, but temperature-wise, it was pretty much largely the same. I saw it at the lowest at around 38 to 39, and as I rotated around the device to look at the other temperatures there, the peak I saw it going into the very, very late 39s and very briefly into the 20s, but overall front and back, the base of the system was hotter at 41 where it was against the table, but the LCD panel sign that there on the top was only around 38 to 39, so not too bad a temperature. Definitely not the sort of temperatures that I would expect any device to reboot. And finally, we've got the temperatures which were arguably the highest. This was when I had those 3 connected devices accessing the device on wireless connectivity. I had a USB going in power in the device, I had a USB device tethered to the bottom, and I had both a LAN and a WAN connection going in with an existing internet source. This is where I saw the temperature pretty much consistently live within the 40s in the majority of sites, peaking at around 45 degrees overall. You can definitely see where that USB tethered connection was generating quite a substantial amount of heat there on the base. Both the LAN and the WAN wired RJ45 connections weren't actually too bad, but overall, even then, the temperatures, if they'd gone any further into the 50s or even peak into the 60s, I would have been a great deal more concerned. But for a pocket-sized device trying to do a lot within a small contained environment, I'm happy with what I saw. Getting back here into the studio after using this device on and off for the better part of a week on my travels, I will say, broadly, I really like it. When I wanted to utilize this with my UniFi network, I was pretty happy. I liked the fact that all of the devices I had that were already connected to a UniFi wireless SSID and network were much more convenient to connect to it when I only had to manage the one connection via that application. Outside of UniFi deployments, I do question the need for it when there are simply better, more advanced and more evolved options in the market. But I do think this, compared with say using a wireless hotspot on your phone that you might connect to your local coffee shop Wi-Fi, I think there is a little bit more flexibility in what this can do. But I will say, UniFi could stand to not only allow for better control of an existing UniFi network through this, and not just having it as a gateway to a UniFi network. I think maybe the ability to create guest SSIDs would be nice. It's still incredibly compact though, and I think that's kind of the main draw here. If I was using this with just tethering and just wireless inputs there, and then I connected it to an existing network via the WAN port, I reckon performance-wise, I'd be pretty happy. But it's when you're either doing exclusively wireless connections or even shared wireless connections that limitations in terms of performance present themselves very, very early. So for example, because it's only 2x2 and 2.5 gig and 5 gigahertz connections there for the frequency, and both the WAN and the LAN are sharing it, and at Wi-Fi 5 with smaller packet management across the frequencies, the result is that if you connect more than about 3 or 4 devices, their performance is going to be inhibited. Now, again, that's why the wired connections are in there. Those can enjoy greater input. But at the same time, if you are going to be reliant on a wireless repeated internet connection, you've already lost some of that wireless capability. And the minute you introduce a LAN that presumably, unless you set up that priority of service within the software, is going to completely gobble up the connectivity, your wireless devices aren't really going to get much of a chance of any of that connection. Again, in low priority environments of exclusive Wi-Fi, you'll be fine. It's just mixed environments that I think this thing could stand to be a little bit more of a high performer. But all of these arguments are pretty churlish once we really rattle down into that price point of $79. Now, in the weeks since my original first impressions on this, the software has seen numerous updates. It's a lot more stable than it was, according to a lot of users online that got this device out the gate and just said, you gotta update that software, because early revisions of that software did seem to be rather underwhelming. And I think that has definitely impacted early reviews of this product. But moving forward, for what it is and what it is trying to be within an existing UniFi ecosystem, I like it. I just wish they'd open the gates on this range of products with something perhaps a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more, UniFi central point. But hopefully this is just the first product of many where they explore, and competition can drive innovation. I'll be interested to see where that goes. But that's been our follow-up here on the UniFi travel router and some testing there in the wild. Let me know what you think in the comments. Again, you might see this in my pocket when I'm on the go, but realistically, until UniFi launch a little bit more of an aggressive model, perhaps something with Wi-Fi 6, perhaps something with a SIM slot, perhaps something with a battery, we'll have to wait and see. But thank you so much for watching. If you want to get a hold of one of these, there is a link in the description. Using it will support what we do here on the channel. It allows us to keep the lights on thanks to a small amount of commission from anything you choose to buy. But just make sure you found the video helpful and make sure that you actually want to get it. Don't just use the link for the sake of it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.